Hi, welcome on the Divorce Couch. My name is Simona. I'm a coach in Germany, and on the couch with me today are.
I'm Salma, and I'm a divorce coach based in London, UK.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a divorce coach based in the north of Ireland.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and I'm a divorce coach based in the north of England.
Today we'd like to talk about a topic which we have called 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards. It's kind of like the child game, snakes and ladders, only that we are on our separation journey, not at the mercy of a die. Today we'd like to explore how to deal with the challenges and the triggers on our separation journey, and how to accept the ups and downs that will naturally accompany us. So who would like to begin? Who has a first thought on this?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think when we discussed this as a topic idea, we were all like, oh my God, that's just so real. Because it is, you get somewhere, you gain a bit of ground, you feel a bit more confident, and then suddenly something happens, or somebody says something, or something that you had hoped would pan out, regardless of whether it's about your divorce journey or not. It just happens to be life in the middle of a divorce journey, and it just sends you backwards, and you just go, what happened there? And I think the fact that it's just normal, and it's real, and it is this up and down emotions. And when we decided to talk about it, we all identified with it. So it's like it's an across the board thing, because when you're on a divorce journey, it's not just about that. Real life happens in the middle of it. And if there's kids around and one of them gets sick or work challenges come up. But I think what I know when I look back on my journey, certainly at the beginning, because I had changed my job and I had started a diploma and I hadn't studied for 15 years. So my brain cells were coming out of hibernation. And my resilience level was really low. So I probably, when I look back, reacted very strongly to very small things that now wouldn't upset me as much. But I think the big thing that I tried to learn how to do, and I had to learn this, I had to figure out how to be okay with not being okay and give myself permission to be upset and to be disappointed, because I'm very good at giving compassion and everything to other people. I'm really bad at doing it for myself. And I felt like I wasn't managing, wasn't coping, my stress levels were up. And I think when I learned slowly, like tiny baby steps to go, okay, there's a lot of change, it's normal. When I learned how to tell myself that, I coped a little bit better, because life still happened. The change was that my coping mechanisms changed as I evolved on the journey.
Yeah, and I think so often we all use the expression, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And we all think when we do have those sort of times where things are difficult, that actually we've gone back over. But I think something that I said to you ladies when we were chatting about this topic is that, it's about looking at it like a bit of a rope with lots of knots in. And, you come across a hurdle or a trigger, whatever it is, and you go down. And when you go down, it's like undoing that knot. And then you carry on, and then something else happens. And actually, yes, you go down, but don't think of it as going back, because you're not, you're going forward in your journey. And, I began to realize that, and just being aware of that psychologically, because I do think a huge thing is that you think, I've gone back over. It's no, you haven't gone back over. You've taken another step forward in your journey. And every downtime is a step closer to being okay.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
The gaps between those downtimes get less, and things trigger. And I can remember sort of at one stage, and you can be really, really down where you don't feel you want to get out of bed. And I can remember not feeling like it. I can remember not getting out of bed, and actually it was awful. I had to say to myself, right, okay, I'm feeling in a really bad way. If all I do is get out of bed today and get in the shower, that is enough. That is all I expect of myself. And there will be those tough times. But once you find a way of coping and a way of looking at it, then, when you go back up, you think, okay, I'm feeling up. But there might be another little downturn to come. And you can cope with it. I think that's important. But as I say, the key thing is to think it's not a step back, it's a step forward.
Yeah, sorry, Sana, let me just,
No, go ahead.
something that just pops into my mind, which kind of is in alignment with what you both said, Jackie and Claire, maybe because we're so used to always look very, very attentively at the things that work well for us, that when it does not work well for us, we experience it much more intense. So hence we feel, oh, this is basically 3 steps backwards, because like the intention, it overcomes us. And as you said, Claire, it happens every day. I think it just happened yesterday, you know, when you kind of think, oh, I got my life under control, and all of a sudden, you know what, it wasn't. And I thought, you know what, this is kind of exactly what this is, the snakes and ladders about. But you never go back to square one, right? You never fall back all the way to the beginning, because you're slowly moving forward. But the not so beautiful moments, if we think of draws, let's put them in the more negative emotions, which are so normal, just come with so much intensity that probably this is where also the saying can come from, you know what, 3 steps backwards, because you know what, you just haven't anticipated it. And then maybe this is what we have to do. Maybe we have to anticipate there are bad emotions, there are bad days, there are triggers, and it just comes at us and just wakes us up, and we realize, wow, that's tough. Yeah, that's what I just thought.
Yeah.
I think what sort of resonated for me from what all 3 of you have mentioned in different ways is to work out what your coping mechanisms are. And, you know, sometimes, I mean, especially for myself, I think my coping mechanism was to cry, because I'm a big crier. I cry everything. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm angry. I cry when I'm sad. And, you know, there was a period of time where I remember sitting in the car one day, and I mean, I would cry over anything. Like somebody would be having a perfectly normal conversation and something would just trigger me, and I'd be sitting in the back. And then I remember one day sitting in the back of the car with my sisters, and they were talking about something, I don't know, quite normal. And I suddenly started crying in the back of the car because something had triggered me. And they looked around, they went, oh my God, oh God, what have we done? What have we said? And I went, I don't know. I just wanted to cry. And I felt a bit ashamed of myself, that what is wrong with you? Why do you always cry? And it was only when I kind of accepted, I think, that was my way of offloading my stresses or my thoughts or my emotions. So rather than feel ashamed of crying, which very often, you know, there's a negative connotation to, you know, if you're crying, that you're weak, or that, you know, you can't cope, or all of these things that we tell ourselves when, you know, we have that moment where we just want to go off and cry. And I think that for me was a really big learning, that when I was feeling that I was going backwards, rather than fight that emotion and think, no, you have to be strong. You have, you know, you've made all this progress. Stop. Really, these are the kind of things that were going on in my head. What is wrong with you? You were fine yesterday. You know, why are you woken up in such a sort of, you know, horrible mood today? And it was actually just the relief that I felt. And that was, in some ways, became a really positive coping mechanism for myself, because once I'd let that emotion out, it's almost like I would feel like I could get on with my day.
So what do you think, what would be a classic 2 steps, 3 steps backwards thing that you had experienced along your separation journey, or the divorce journey even, you know, where did you feel, oh God, I hadn't expected that?
Do you know, one really important one that always stands out for me was this constant getting reeled back in. So after my ex-husband left, it was almost like for a very long time, I was still his punch bag. So if he was having a bad day, or he was having something going on for him, it was almost like, I know what I'll do. I'll ring Salma and I'll have a conversation with her, and I'd literally be answering the phone on 10 thinking, I don't know where this conversation is going to go. And I would sort of rev myself up and say, I'm not going to get like dragged into this. I'm not going to go back to that, because what 9 times out of 10, what would happen is it would start off about something about the children, and then he would say something and I would get triggered, and then I would go, you know, and I hated that because it left me, you know, getting off the phone and incredibly angry, and it was my day that was ruined. I don't know what was happening on the other side, but he'd obviously achieved something out of that conversation. And I would make progress, and then there would be some phone calls where after, you know, I used to prepare myself and this is what I'm going to say, and then I would be caught off guard, and I'd have this conversation and I would go fall straight back into that pattern. And
so
then,
am I hearing, Salma, that you were disappointed in yourself? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay,
I felt like that was me going 2 steps back, because then I would say, oh, well, last week you spoke to him and you managed that conversation so well. What is wrong with you? Now you've just gone back to square one. But it was, I think, just that recognition of that pattern slowly prepared me for future conversations. And now our conversations, you know, are much better because I've been able to break that pattern. So it wasn't necessarily me going back as such, but it was more about going, right, okay, I can try this again. I know what works. I just forgot this time.
Yeah.
You know?
I think sometimes things have to not work a number of times before the penny actually drops.
Yes.
Because you do, don't you? You sort of, you have the idea of how you would like it to work out and like it to be, and you have faith in people, but actually then something happens, and like you say, well, what the hell just happened with that phone call? But then something else comes along and you still got that bit of faith in you, and you know, you try to do the decent thing and talk, and then after a number of times you think, right, okay. But again, we don't need to beat ourselves up for all those times that we were reeled in, because the important thing is that at some stage, it's all, again, part of the process of you realizing and accepting that actually that behavior pattern doesn't work for me now. I need to do it differently moving forward for me. But it doesn't happen overnight, does it?
No.
You reeled in. You get reeled in quite a few times.
Well, an awful lot of my friends have often heard me say, I feel like God needs a sledgehammer to hit me on the head to get through to me. And it's usually something obvious. And it's like, Lord, how come you're still looking after me? Because you must be really frustrated. That's what I was thinking of when you were saying it. That's literally what, I mean, loads of my friends could say, oh yeah, she says that a lot. Because I do. Because I think, what is wrong with me that I don't see the obvious? And that would link back to your feeling of frustration, Salma. It's like, sometimes I make up my own level of steps down. So the situation may not be 2 steps down. It might be half a step down in real terms. But my response to it makes me feel like I've dropped 2 steps. And I love the way that you talked, Simone, about the strength of the emotions that we're not used to sitting with. And I mean, but one of the things I was thinking when we were chatting, for any of you females out there that are listening to this that are around our age, well, then we have hormones. You put hormones into the middle of this mix and this conversation, and you think, well, where do you go with that? Because I remember going to my GP, after I'd separated and I was in a new job and diploma, as I'd said, and honestly, when you're like a piece of elastic and you feel like it's really stretched, going to break. And I thought, I don't know what gives here, because I couldn't change my job. I was there were loads of things. I was on this pathway of divorce. I was studying because I needed to for the job. And so, I just got some hormones. And so sometimes, if we can look at something and we're able to be slightly more objective or use other people to bounce off what we're feeling about, somebody else can come up with something that we haven't seen. And actually, it can be small, but it can make a really big difference, because what that did for me was, I don't think it was ever about were the hormones going to make a difference or not. It was the fact that I had something to cling on to try for hope to go, this might help. And if I can manage my emotional response slightly better, because let's face it, all the stuff you hear about the menopause is how your emotions dip so quickly and it's harder to pull up. I mean, it's all about that. And actually, for me, that made a big difference. And so sometimes it's something that we don't expect to be an answer to help us.
Yeah. And yes, the menopause does a lot to our body, but I think also the stress releases hormones that can be sometimes so incredibly unhealthy. So I think this when I'm quickly going back to what Salma just said, and if I compare it to the analogy of the snakes and ladder game, so I think, you know what, the die is or the die, I think it's the singular term for one die. I think it's very often the outside. So, and then we feel we are always at the effect of the die. Also, no, we go all the way down, or we are at the effect of the lawyer's letter coming, or the ex-partner calling, doing something, right? And we always feel we are in response mode. And this is what kind of really pulls us back. In the moment we feel we are out of control. And then, you know what, it comes with because that's a classic trigger to me. It was, you know what, when something happened on the outside and then I felt, oh, I'm not in control. And then this really, you know what, triggered these intense emotions. And that's when I probably would have said, that's 3 steps backwards. You know what, not feeling I am guiding, I'm in charge of life, you know what. And I guess it's a lot to do with, what do the others do, right? You know what, how much do I give the other person or the other lawyer or the life circumstances, my outside world, in that challenging time of your life, you know, but how much do you give away? I think it's about probably reclaiming control of your own life, right? To have lesser 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, because I know one thing, I think I said that before, it will continue. That's just something we have to accept. Yeah,
and I think one of the things as well is recognizing those emotions. But like you say, Simone, you get a letter through the post and you think, whoa, or an email, and you think, whoa, how can they say that? How can they do that? How can they expect that? And I think at that point we then go into, we react. So we're reacting and not responding. And that's when, and the cortisol floods our body and we're all, and I think it's bringing awareness to how we are reacting and just thinking, right, okay, and putting a little bit of space and thinking, right, oh, I can feel myself reacting here, and acknowledging what you're doing and thinking, then have some space before you respond, because when we react to something, we don't deal with it in the best way. We're just dealing with it in a way to give ourselves a bit of calm, but that calm is often better just having some space and then thinking, right, how do I respond to it? So it's about bringing awareness to our reaction, and instead of just going off on one, which we go off on one, but just think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm going off on one here. What is actually driving that reaction?
And
what is it?
That's really interesting, Jackie, because I read an article recently about like what happens when we're, you know, getting into a state of stress and this, and it talks about how your body starts producing this cortisol, and that's what makes us behave like the way that we. And they were saying that, you know, but the important thing is to, in order to get yourself back to a state where you're going to be able to respond, you need to use up that cortisol, because your body's producing it, so you need to expend it somewhere. And they were saying that, you know, that's why sometimes like they've done these studies where someone's, you know, because it's something that I do when I'm stressed. If I start scrubbing the house from the top to the bottom, I feel like, oh wow, I feel like so relieved. And part of this article, what it said is actually what you're doing is you're using up those cortisol levels. So you're bringing yourself, so physically you're helping yourself as well. And I know that's really, I mean, it's really difficult to do when you're in that moment and where you do just want to, you know, react and lash out. But I think if you can sort of have an insight into what's actually going on inside, then you're less likely to start blaming yourself, because there is something physically going on within your body that needs to be channeled. And then so you're not just weak and stupid and, you know, going backwards. Actually, there's a reason, a physical reason why you're feeling this way. And it's about, okay, I know what's happening now. You know, how am I going to channel this before I just sort of, you know,
Say something I regret.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, listening to
I
you
was
talk
about to say that just now.
Yeah.
That's such a good analogy. And what I was thinking of when you were talking about cleaning the house and thinking, you know, how much energy that takes to do that. And if we don't do something with this cortisol and we sit and we sort of sit on it, can you imagine that sort of lid on pressure cooker feeling? Because if that energy allows you to clean a house and you're not doing it and you internalize it, well, of course, it's going to magnify all of those negative feelings, like out of any proportion known to man or beast. Yeah. Because if you can clean a house with the energy and you don't use it and you do this, you can see why it really pulls you right down. That I really like that, the way you said that.
Yeah. I think, you know, it always goes so quick, and I have taken notes because I'm supposed to close our episode, and I find it very difficult. So I'd like to suggest something that we hadn't discussed beforehand. Do we each have maybe like one sentence to say, you know what, to me, this 2-step forwards, 3-step backwards in a nutshell will mean something, right? You know what, because I don't know if I can just have a takeaway, because we each interpreted it so individually. So maybe we take this episode to maybe just, you know what, have an individual takeaway.
Why not? Yeah. Because I think we've all been there, you know, and I think the important thing for me is actually, even many years post divorce, there are still days where I wake up and I'm thinking, oh my God, why is this happening again? Why am I feeling like this again? Why are things not working out? So I think like this feeling of, you know, moving forward in life and then feeling like you're taking a step back is actually a normal process of life. But when you're going through a divorce and separation, because of the heightened emotions, it's almost like those feelings get magnified out of proportion. Well, not even out of proportion, because they were real at that time. Like, I didn't feel like they were out of proportion. I felt they were completely justified. And I think it's just important, I think, to really realize that stress is a part of our life at every stage. And, you know, yes, you are going to feel maybe 100 times worse at this point because you are under a lot of stress, but just, you know, find ways to cope with that and move forward, and don't beat yourself up about, you know, going backwards. Just look to make those small changes of how it could be different next time.
Claire?
I think the thing that resonates the most for me, and it's probably been the thing that's taken me the longest to learn and to put into my world, is what I had mentioned earlier, the idea of learning to be compassionate with myself. You know, if I had a friend going through what I was going through, I would be saying to her, do you know what, stop being so hard on yourself. It's okay to feel like this. It's okay to breathe. Let's go for a walk. I have been very bad at doing that for myself. So for me, my takeaway would be, try and see, are you compassionate with yourself? And if you're not, what might that look like? What might be the things that you would do for your best friend if they were in this situation? And what could you do to give yourself that? Because that will make it process easier.
I like that. Yeah, Jackie?
And I think for me, the real important thing and what helped me was back to sort of realizing it's not going backwards, that it's part of the journey forwards. Because, you know, I used to find that when you did hit those difficult times, you just layered on top of it more issues because of the way you felt about yourself. And when I could think of it in a different way, then that helped me immensely. So during the down times, I just used to think, this is one step closer to really sort of feeling good about myself and getting through this. So I think it's just, you know, the way you're thinking, it's not backwards. Everything is a step forwards, and a learning process that's going to set you up for the rest of your life, really. The skills that you learn and the coping strategies, you learn to ride that wave and other things, as we all know, because we sort of chat to each other. So you're constantly learning, aren't you? And
So,
I mean, we learn so much from each other on our chats. So
what can I add? I think when I just have to say that, like yesterday, it was a bit of a parenting moment. And, you know what, just every now and then, when you feel this emotion coming, try and be aware of what's happening in your body and ask yourself, can I stop it now from being explosive, like the pressure cooker? Or am I able to acknowledge it and say, okay, well, this is anger or this is sadness? You know what, 3 steps backwards sometimes also manifests itself as sadness. This is sadness. Mm-hmm. We acknowledge it. We say, this is normal. This is part of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then maybe just let it sit with me and trust that it will go away. It will. These emotions don't stay on forever. I can assure you, this morning, my daughter and I were like this again.
Great.
Okay, I love our talks. I'm happy to see you all again. If you like this episode, please just a quick thumbs up and subscribe. Then we know, in general, if we hit a soft spot with you, so we can dive into this deeper. Looking forward to see you all for our next episode. Goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.